Okay, perfect. Hello there, everybody. Welcome to Her Stories Untold, Live Talks with Traei. My name is Traei. I am the founder and author of Her Stories Untold. It's a global book project sharing different empowering and inspiring stories of women out there that have stories to share, journeys that have been taken, but not realizing their significance and importance. This project is open to all women and transgender women in the globe. Essentially, it's about women around the globe from all walks of life. So if you have a story of your journey of how you came to be, whom and where you are, please do check out www.herstoryuntold.com. Okay, this project is open to all women and transgender women in the entire world. The purpose of this project, again, is to empower, uplift, and inspire other women. Before I begin our talk today, I want to acknowledge that the land on which I live and work is the traditional and unceded territory of the Cook Nation and lies within the shared traditional territories of Tile, Watu, Katsiat Musqueam, Squamish, Kikit, Stolo First Nations. Very importantly, I want to warmly welcome everyone joining us here today, our very special guest, award-winning author Amy Weinland Daughters, for her book, Dear Dana, That Time I Went Crazy and Wrote All 580 of My Facebook Friends a Handwritten Letter. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me, Traei. I'm honored, really humbled to be on a part of this initiative you've got going. So
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And I'm honored to have your presence here and, just being able to connect with you and, connect with the audience too here today. So yeah, please tell us more about your empowering journey and how this book came to be and what got you into writing, I guess.
well, I started writing. My writing journey started, my husband and I both had, professional positions. And when we were about, I don't know, 10 years into our marriage, he got an opportunity with his job to move to the UK for 3 years. And so I stopped working. We'd worked the whole time and I was like, what do I do? So I went and took history classes at the university. And I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to write. So I started writing. Then I realized, wait, this is something I could turn into a career. And so that's how I started writing. I walked away from the business world. And once we got back home to the United States, I never stopped writing. It led to, one book. I write about sports, I freelance write. The second book, Dear Dana, was completely non-intentional. I was literally just, minding my own business and reconnected with my friend Dana on Facebook, who I hadn't seen in 30 years. We had met at a summer camp in Texas in 1986. And we probably spent 6 weeks together. And we connected. We both have big personalities. But then, it's one of those things I didn't really have a whole lot of lucid memories of, but I'd always remember. So we walked away, like, have a nice life, and 30 years later, I look her up on Facebook
30 years.
and yeah, and her name comes up like, oh, there's Dana. And I friended her. She accepted my request. We had no mutual friends, which is super unusual in the world of summer camps. And then I started, like we all do, I started looking at her page. And she had 4 daughters and 1 son. And the son, Parker, was at St. Jude in Memphis, Tennessee, fighting cancer. And I was like, wow, that is, as a fellow mom, I was like, wow, that's tough. And so I started following their journey. And when he relapsed, he was only 15 years old. And I was like, at this point, I was a, bona fide writer. I was like, it was kind of inspired, like a bolt from the skies. Like I was like, I'll start writing them letters. And so I started sending her and Parker, these weekly letters at the Ronald McDonald House in Memphis. And about 8 weeks into that, Parker passed away, unthinkably, and there's really no words for that. And then so I felt like I was part of the story, even though I had nothing to do with it. But I was like, so what do I do next? I like to pray. So I prayed about it. I was like, what do I do next? And I just kind of got this clear idea. I was just going to keep writing Dana. So I had to kind of hunt her down in Louisiana. And I started sending the first letters after Parker passed to her husband's law office, kind of stalkerish. So he started getting letters. He started taking them home. And about 4 months into that, and the whole time I'm thinking, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy. And I know it. She Facebook messaged me back with her home address. And
Wow.
then magically, about a month after that, I just started getting letters back from her. And,
Wow.
and so we spent 2 years, like, without having one electronic communication, like 2 years of just in the mail. Like, we shared so much.
Not
She
even
shared
a
her
phone call?
Not even a phone call, not an email address, nothing. And we shared so much. We eventually reconnected in person, and we still write each other every week, about every other week, between the two of us. But we shared so much that Traei, after about, I guess I was 6 or 8 months into the actual pen paling where it was both of us involved, I was like, you know what? This is so powerful, because I was sharing on a level that was so intimate with this random girl in Louisiana who I didn't even know.
Yeah.
And she was sharing with me in a way that was inspiring and humbling. I was like, if this can happen with this random one Facebook girl, like what else is out there? And I think something bigger than me overtook me. And I was like, you know what? I'll write everyone a handwritten letter. And I mean, I realize that sounds completely, you know, it was insane. But I put everybody's names in a box and I just started drawing them out and I started writing letters. And once the momentum kicked off, I ended up writing everyone. It changed my entire life. It blew up my heart. And I never intended to write a book about any of this because I did it non-intentionally. I didn't do it to make everybody, I just did it because I felt like that's what I was supposed to do. I was really on a mission. But then it was so special and it was so life changing. I was like, I've got a story, not that I want to go sell books. Yes, I want to sell books. I'm an author, but I want to share this story. And it's kind of turned into my life's mission, is sharing this beautiful story of grief and hope and human connection.
And humor too. There
Right,
was
right, right.
so
Thank you
I
for acknowledging that. Yeah.
even though amidst all of those things, yeah, I saw there were points where I laughed. So kind of going back, like there was that aha moment, that was the particular moment where you knew like, okay, I'm gonna start this project, that feeling overtook you, and you started this project and then you finished it and then you wrote this book and you're like, I want, because I want to share with other people, right? So um like, what was what is your intent of sharing this book? I think, like, what do you want to tell people?
Well, I think there's so many takeaways from the project, but I think the number one thing I want to share with people is, if two people reach out with nothing but goodwill on the line, like if you write me, Traei, and
Yeah,
then I write you back, and
yeah,
let's say we have different politics, or we have different religious beliefs, or we're
yes,
from different ends of whatever. All of a sudden, those differences they still matter, but they start to dissipate. It starts to not matter. And we live in this divisive, fractured world that we all live in. I think we're all desperately looking for some kind of hope we can hang on to. And
yeah,
I want to share this story because I think the hope that we're so desperately seeking is sitting nearer to us that we think. And I think we have this incredible power that we can wield in each other's lives and in the world that's under acknowledged. And
yeah.
I want to share this hope with the rest of the world. And my complete intent, right down to being here and talking to you today. And I know we're like-minded. And it's funny how you said this when we talked, like the universe connects people that are like-minded
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah,
And and that's why I'm honored to be on your show. But that
I-
is my intent, is
yeah.
to share hope with people. That's what I want to do.
And I love how you put that all together, because I think part of this whole journey, in your projects, in your writing, in your books, and part of her stories Untold, I think together we're creating hopes, we're giving hopes. Hopefully other people can find a bit of hope and inspiration in all that we do, right? So having said that, I want to go into your book a little bit, and kind of share some of the letters, so in case the audience is wondering, what are they talking about, these letters, right? What did she write, right? So Amy does share, you do share all the letters that you have written, and which is amazing. And there was one that stood out particularly because we were talking about hope, right? It was letter 21. And if it's okay, I'm gonna just be reading it out, this letter, to share with the audience, okay? It says, I went through most of school with number 21 and sat next to him at high school graduation. When I wrote to him, he was suffering through major health issues. I knew this not because I was in regular contact with him, but because of updates he had posted on Facebook. What I didn't know were the details. The letter gave me the opportunity both to ask him for more information and to tell him that I was thinking about him and sincerely cared about what was happening. If my project hadn't forced me to write this letter, I would have never gotten engaged in number 21's story. In other words, I could have cared silently, but now I was going to have to care out loud. So September 5th, 2015. Dear number 21, greetings. You're probably wondering why I'm writing you a letter. Good question. Recently, I started wondering what being friends on Facebook is all about. What does it even mean? Are there rules or requirements? What are we supposed to do? Then I got a crazy idea and wondered if I could manage to write each of my 500 plus Facebook friends an actual letter. Would I even have anything to say? That brings us here to your letter. What's interesting about you specifically is that I actually feel like I know you better because of Facebook. Yes, we went to high school together. Yes, we even sat next to each other at graduation. And yes, we've even seen each other recently. Something I certainly can't say about 75% of my Facebook people. But all that aside, it's your posts that make me know you because you are willing to share more than pictures of your cats and inspirational quotes. Here are some of what I know. You like the Texans and football. Yay for that. 2, you have a beautiful daughter. 3, you are passionate about food and cooking. 4, you have been job hunting. 5, you have recently suffered some major health concerns. But even though I know these things and glad to know them, I have questions, stuff I should know but don't. Here are but a few questions. How old is your daughter? What are her aspirations for the future? What specifically happened to you medically? Are you okay now? Are you working now? I mean, I see that you have a employer listed on Facebook, but I'm not sure if it's current. For example, mine says I work in packaging at Dairy Queen. more, more, more than anything, I want you to know that I care about you and hope really for reals in bracket that all is well. Though I didn't say it, brackets, and should have, I pray for you when I saw your post about health, and I hope you continue to gain strength and are able to recreate your life in a way that provides you with maximum happiness. Take care, my friend. I look forward to seeing you on Facebook and perhaps again in real life. Lots of love, Amy WD, your friend in real life. Now, he responded via a handwritten letter just 2 weeks after you wrote him, Amy, September 21st, 2015. Amy, I was very pleased to receive your letter. It's nice to know that someone sees my post on Facebook. Happy face. My beautiful daughter is almost 15, attends a prep school, runs cross-country track, plays volleyball, will play basketball, and loves history and science. I've raised her alone since she was 4, as her mother had a drug addiction. After my car wreck last year, brackets, and shattered my spine, my daughter had to move back in with her mother in Austin, who has been sober for 5 years. I had a massive seizure after surgery, which cost me my driver's license and forced me to move back to Houston. I've been employed locally for a month now, but my goal in Austin by January. My baby needs me. I appreciate your prayers and want to say I'm able to walk, run, lift stuff, etc. now. Good prayer you had. Thanks for the letter and the wake-up call. See you again, number 21. And I wanted to share that this particular letter really stood out to me because you mentioned that number 21 came across as happy and opinionated online. And although he did mention his health issues and he had a daughter, his news feed could never properly express the depths of his struggle. And this is kind of the same for what everyone's going through behind the social media screen or behind closed doors, right? You wrote, you had to go deeper to get to that. And that's precisely what you did by writing a letter that I would have never written without the Facebook project. He actually responded to you by saying that he was going to go off to write the girl who sat on the other side of my graduation a letter. And it was one of the single funniest lines in history of the project for you, right?
Yeah.
And so after that, it took you just shy of 2 months to reply back to him. The timing would haunt you forever. Because during those 60 days, his health deteriorated and he passed away on November 16th in Tomball, Texas. He was only 47. And what you mentioned, you had replied via telegram to his handwritten response to your original letter written September 4th on November 13th, which was a Friday. And even if you had mailed it that day, which was unlikely, The earliest he would have received it in Texas would have been the 17th or 18th. So what that means here is that you had missed him by only days. So in that letter, you wrote, "Dear number 21, greetings. Sorry it has taken me so long to reply to your card. I wanted to let you know that of all the responses I've received to my Facebook letters, your quip about writing a letter to the girl who sat on the other side of you at high school graduation as she was always behind you was by far the best and funniest so far. Thanks for that. Please also know that we are all praying for you and looking forward to your health returning completely. You are truly loved by those lucky enough to call you a friend. Lots of love and best wishes at Amy Daughters, your friend on Facebook and in real life." Um, and it really stood out to me because you mentioned that, even though during your Facebook project that, other friends would pass away, this was the only one that died during a period of active communication. So, and you mentioned you often wonder what is if his family's read your reply sometime after his passing, but they were unaware of the rest of the story. And then I think you mentioned regret, which is I think it's so important to talk about here because here's the thing about seeing, it's not just Facebook, on social media, Instagram, it's not always an accurate depiction of real life. And I think this speaks strongly about how if there's an urge to do something, we should just go for it and do it, which is exactly the theme of our talk today, right? So you just know
Right.
when it might be too late. Yeah, sorry.
Right. And I think that, I do feel regret about that. And I do wonder if his family read, the second communication. And then the timing of me missing him by 3 or 4 days is, kind of harrowing. But the other side of that story, Trey, is I never would have reached out and told him I cared about him. I mean, the first letter would have never happened without the project. And so on one hand, I'm thankful that I did get to tell him that before he passed, that he knew he had a real friend, in me and others that cared about him. And then what you said about over and over again, I realized through these letters that I had either assumed things that were not out of any kind of, you know, not any kind of, there wasn't any kind of, anything bad, like where I was trying to assume bad things about people, but I just had people wrong because all I had was these little snapshots of their life, as much as they would show me. But 21 is a great example of all of us that were living real lives behind these personas. But it's just so profound when you realize that everyone else's life is as real as yours is.
Yes, and first of all, I want to thank you for writing this and writing to him and then sharing it with us in your book and having this opportunity today for me to share this letter with our audience here together and just kind of sharing the emotions together. I also want to share that my father, he's obviously passed away since 2004, but he would write me letters wherever he traveled to for business, for work, and it would just be from the hotel. He would get these, I don't know, I remember back in the days, the hotels had these like thin sheets of paper, especially in Asia, and then he would write with the hotel like pen that's provided for. And because they were
Right.
thin sheets of paper, um, I felt like when he wrote, when you put paper to pen and using the strength of your hand, the ink is like almost carving into the sheets of the paper, right? So I actually found one of his letters like several years ago during the pandemic, and when I took it out, it was like he wrote this yesterday, because the letters were like carved into those sheets so deep, and it was a simple letter. It was just, what did he write? He wrote like, "Hello, I've been thinking about you. I've been traveling. How are you doing? I hope school and all those things are doing well for you. And uh, some thoughts that came to mind. If there's an earthquake, these are the steps and what you need to do. Um, Anyways, take care. I'm thinking of you." It wasn't anything in depth. It wasn't a super long story of anything, but it's just it was very emotional because I could use my finger and touch the letter, that was indented into the letter and still so fresh. So, and then I put it back and kept it in its original envelope. It was like my dad wrote to me yesterday. So I'm glad he did. And I'm glad that I didn't lose the letter. So
Right.
it's so sentimental, yet so meaningful and so important. And I
But
think that, sorry, you were gonna share, yeah.
no, go ahead. You. no, but it's like a physical representation of his voice. You've got something physical that speaks with his voice, though. And I love the indentions in the page, but it's another element of the thin hotel stationery, and he wrote and the fatherly advice. I mean, it's a, and, there's I want to say cliche words like it's a treasure, it's a gift, but that's what it is. That's what it is. And he gave you a gift that you can hold on to for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And that's what a letter can be,
Yeah,
given
it's
the right circumstances.
yeah, exactly. And it's just so powerful. And yeah, and then I guess from time to time again I take it out and read it, and it's a close connection because the power of writing is that you have to actually, get a piece of paper, postcard or whatever, Christmas card, birthday card, and then you actually have to grab a pen and physically carve out some letters, put letter to ink, to ink that paper, and then go to the mail, the post office, and actually physically go buy stamps and mail it out, right? So
Right.
I think you mentioned in your book that the simple and seemingly ordinary act of writing someone a letter has the magical power to transform individuals from electronic creatures to flesh and bone, living, breathing, imperfect yet marvelous human beings. And I think that's what we are. Yeah. Yeah.
No, for sure. And from one angle, the Facebook profile, because when I wrote a letter, I'd have to go look, oh, wait, this is a real person, and I was like, oh, I didn't know this. I didn't know you went to school there. I didn't know you had this kind of activity. I didn't know you were married or had children or, lived somewhere else. But so that's one element of turning them into flesh and blood. But I didn't realize the power of a hand. I didn't understand what that was going to do. Again, I wasn't doing anything intentionally. But what you just said, that whole scenario you laid out where you're important to someone else when they took the time, like you knew you were important to your father. Number 21 knew I was important. I knew I was important because number 21 wrote me back. I felt important. But when someone, especially in 2023, goes and gets paper, finds an envelope. I mean, who has an envelope unless you're paying for something, and then drives to a post office. Where are they? Buys a stamp and then puts it in there. I mean, you are an important person if someone would go to all that trouble for you. And that's what I didn't get. I didn't realize how it was going to blow people's hearts up. And, we went on a book tour. Dana went with me last summer, and over again, people had the book or didn't have the book, but they had their letter. They had their letter, and they were like, look at my letter. And first of all, they thought they were a rock star because they had a letter, but it meant so much to them. And you could tell the care that they kept these letters in. And has nothing to do with my letter writing skills. I mean, I think I'm a writer. I think some of the letters are good, but it's the power of the act of writing a letter. And that's why I'm driven again to share this story, because you said that, but we all have this in our wheelhouse. We all have this power. I didn't know I had it. And then people were just like, wow, it's a letter. And I told everybody, look, I'm writing everyone a letter. And they're like, oh, I'm so special. You picked me. I picked everyone. And they still felt individually, because people understand that effort and it means something to them. And we feel, though we can be connected to all these people, it's not an individual feeling, like you can get, like, I'm special. You made me feel special from that letter. I didn't know I had that power. We all have it.
Yeah. And it's the power of intention that is genuine. Because when you write a letter, you actually have to sit there and be vulnerable with your feelings and
Right.
let it unfold, and then put it to the paper, right? So it's not a quick text message where you're like tap tap tap, or even auto correct or and stuff like that, and then happy face to just wrap it up and send it out there. You're like writing stuff. You can certainly draw, right?
Right.
That's for
Right. For
sure,
sure.
right? When you're sending something, mailing something out, for sure. But it's just such a honest moment with yourself, because I mean everybody can go try it today. Go get a piece of paper, go get a pen and sit there. I think if you haven't written anything for a long time, especially to anybody with that method of delivery and format, you're going to be sitting there and wondering, like, what should I write?
Yeah.
And that's okay. But then once you start writing, it becomes like an exercise. You're going to naturally probably start having words that would flow out, right? So
Right. And you see what happens. And I think that the number one rule in letter writing is there's no rules. Like you can
exactly.
write two sentences, go buy a small card if that's what you want to do. And then if you decide you go over the card, because I did this with Dana at the beginning, like I'd buy a card and I'd be like, oh wait, once I started writing, like you said, then I had so much to say every week. And then I started buying notebook paper and I just would stick it in the card on top, and fold it up with the card. And
Yeah.
so there's no, and I think you're right. You write dear somebody and then just see what happens. And
Yeah.
and there's and then you'll naturally come to the place where whether it's in 4 sentences or 400. And I think the thing is, as meaningful as you'll hope it be for the person who receives it, I think it will end up being more meaningful for you as you write it for many different reasons that you will discover.
100%. And I think, while the focus is just letting go, the power of writing, it's also talking about the power of letting go, right? Because
Right.
writing a letter, sending out a card, mailing it out is different from sending a text message where you can cancel or delete, right? Delete for everyone, for example, on WhatsApp or something like that, right? Nobody gets to see what's going on, right? Unless you trace the systems. but
Right.
but you can't do that with a letter. So you have to
No. Yeah.
you have to be truthful, right? Because you can't be like, "Where- come back, it's
No,
some
it's
yeah,
and that's the other thing. It's a bold, brave moment. You see somebody drive by, here in the United States are blue mailboxes, and in every country, like I live in the UK, those are red, you know. But when somebody's over there dropping some off, unless it's a check, that's a bold move. It's a
yeah,
bold move to put, and it's also freeing because then you forgot when you send it, and there's no red at the bottom of the text message like read, at this time or delivered. There's none of that. You don't even know if it made it. It
yeah,
made it. It didn't make it. Who knows? And you kind of forgot what you said anyway. And so
yeah,
it's freeing. It's brave. It's vulnerable. It's all kinds of things. But it's beautiful. And as much as and I say this all the time, electronic messaging is necessary and it's a
yes,
good thing. But
yes,
this is
I agree.
just another level. It in all the things that it will bring you. You can't really. You have to go do it. And I would encourage everybody this weekend to write one person. Just
Yeah,
write somebody.
I'm with you on that. So everybody, this weekend, go grab any pen, any type of paper. I love stationery, by the way, since I was a kid. But it could be anything. My dad used to just like grab anything. As I mentioned, he'll like think of me. He's like, hey, I was thinking of you, and wrote like not so interesting lines, but he wrote to me all the time, right?
Mhm.
For wherever
Right.
it was, right? And that's beautiful, a collection of
Mhm.
letters, right? So yeah, go out there and start writing people, not just locally, but all over the globe. You have relatives or friends. And I think it's a fun project. But write with sincerity, and then maybe not have so much expectations of the outcome. And which segues to another point that just came up, while we were talking about this, is that there's also the power of reading someone else's letters. You know, I think we also need to learn how to read someone's letters. It's like reading somewhat like reading a book, but they also have to learn to digest what's been shared with them, kind of thing. So that's why it takes possibly some time before one can respond to you. So it's not a quick process. They're not going to write to you like 2 days later, and then you get it like in 5 days and stuff like that. So yeah,
Right. And I think that's important. Lowering your not lowering your expectations, but recalibrating your expectations
yeah,
that you're going to get a response right away. Because the beautiful thing is,
yes,
since you don't know when someone read your letter, it gives them the great freedom to take all the time they want to
yeah,
read it. And we used the word earlier to let it marinate, you
yes,
know. And then since in the texting culture, email culture, texting especially, messaging, instant messaging, WhatsApp is kind of the way it should be done is that you expect a response in a fairly rapid. People are expecting a response back when you text, but the great thing about letters, since they don't know when you got it, it takes a while to get there. You have time to really digest everything, like you said, and then write a much more sincere, meaningful response
yep,
back.
yep. And it's okay to take time, which I also wanted to share with your permission, the letter number 66.
Right.
Yeah. So here goes. You wrote that Letter 66 highlights another set of recurring themes I encountered when writing the Facebook letters. This recipient was somebody I felt super awkward writing to, because I also really didn't know the person. I would never have ever expected her to hear back from her. So I met number 66, a 20-something-year-old at my college roommate's daughter's wedding. This placed her among my loosest Facebook connections. The potential awkwardness of this category of recipients, we all have this type of connection, by the way.
For sure.
Who you are, where you are, what you're doing. People whom I had known in person only very briefly because of a common friend wasn't something I thought to be wary of going into the project. The opening paragraphs of my letter illustrate just how tenuous my personal relationship with number 66 was, and how my explanation about why I was writing the letters was continuing to evolve. December 1st, 2015. Dear 66, greetings. First things first, I hope you remember me in real life from Molly's wedding. To reintroduce myself in horrible handwriting, I am Nancy's Texas tech roommate and friend for life, Amy Daughters. So why in the world am I writing you a letter on paper after meeting you at a wedding several years ago? That's a really good question. Recently, I've been wondering about what being friends on Facebook is all about. What does it even mean? It all started when I wanted to write a Facebook friend a few supported cards, Dana, of course, right? As her son was battling cancer. After I wrote the first one, I realized I didn't know where to send it. I didn't have her address because, well, she was just a Facebook friend. That got me thinking, what is the difference between real people and just Facebook people? Or instead, are they all the same, only I treat them or approach them differently? Then I got really ridiculous and wondered what would happen if I wrote each and every one of my Facebook friends a letter. Would I even have anything to say? How many addresses would I have to ask for? Would it be the most awkward thing ever? So you had written that letter to number 66 thought that she would never write back.
Right.
But you were very astonished because she actually hand wrote you a letter 5 months later.
Right.
And she wrote on April 25th, 2016. I'll just be 100% honest. I'm embarrassed that it took me this long to respond when I was so excited and amazed that you wrote me. It was so fun to get a handwritten letter, especially because it meant something deeper. I actually thought I would write you back way sooner, but it felt like life got crazy. And honestly, the further I got away from the day I received your letter, the less I wanted to write back because I felt embarrassed. So I thought that was really genuine and really honest. And I think, oftentimes people, I mean, we ourselves too, right? As human beings, we get stuck as I can't believe how long it took me to write you back. And, and, but sometimes it takes that bit of time to digest, right? Where we were just talking about,
Right.
sitting down, and then now you have something that you actually want to talk about and share because, and you wrote that, what did you say in the yeah, you were talking about the commodity of relationships, right? Like investing means depositing something of personal value into another human to achieve a richer connection with him, right? So, um, and this uh, you talked about how Facebook certainly has value to keep us in touch, but in some ways, it also doesn't allow us to experience the hope and fear associated with risking a part of our very selves for a relationship, which you did. As vulnerable as in reaching out to such an awkward, distant relationship. Yeah. So
Right. Right. And then it turned out being that it really meant something to her. And then she was vulnerable back, which touched you and other people and me, that she was embarrassed, which is so relatable because I
yeah,
think every single one of us can relate to not responding or not doing something and we're embarrassed. But then her letter was life changing to me because she ranked among those that I was the most surprised to hear back from.
yeah,
Therefore the letter made the book because her words were so honest and vulnerable. So on so many different levels, that interchange, I risked, she risked, it was bold, and we're both changed from it. So, I mean, it's a great story. And I think it also speaks to and you said this, like, that it's never too late. It's never too late to, like, if I got a letter right now, the Facebook project's been over for what? I'm gonna have to go for like 7 years. Okay, when the book came out, I got like 10 Facebook letters, replies that I didn't get the first time around. And you don't think to think 1 minute that that 7 year delay did nothing but explode my excitement. It didn't diminish it. That's why it's never too late. It doesn't matter if, when you do it, if you do it 2 years after you got something, the person on the other end, I would argue, is still going to just be thrilled and surprised and delighted.
Yep, and it's groundbreaking. Yeah, it's very like I don't know if you watched the film, uh, P.S. I Love You.
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah, I actually watched that. I don't usually watch too many romantic movies, but
Right, neither do I. Yeah.
yeah. So then, but I watched that and I really liked it because, um, it was her fiance, right? That he was
Mhm.
dying and he prepared for the 12 months afterwards for her so that she could transition, celebrate his departure, and then he write her letters, send her presents, remind her to take care of herself, go out and have fun. Of course, solicit the help of friends and family to help in the process, book events and trips, so that she could be on the journey to, begin her new life, right? So I thought that was very, yeah, I just really love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the power of writing.
No, again, you know, again, it's a gift that's left behind. That's, you know, it in different time dimensions, even, because it makes me think of your father's letters. It makes me think of what my letters and other people's letters to me are going to mean after they pass. It's number 21. It's
Yeah,
number 21. His
yeah,
letter, who's in a file box sitting right behind me right now,
yeah,
for the reason because it is a gift. I still smile when I think of 21, and I want to laugh because he's funny, and it was that
yes,
essence was captured in that letter. And it's a gift forever. And again, it's back to us having this power to
yeah,
give each other hope and a
yeah,
gift that we don't even know what it's going to mean. And I still think, I think that what you're doing with your stories untold, your ripple effect, you're introducing your listeners to all these different points of hope that maybe they can grab onto, and I know from my letter writing project, not from any intention, not because I'm some great person, but because I got, I don't know, I don't, just because I got inspired, but I'll never know the impact those letters had, just like those people will never know what their words back to me meant. There's no way we can ever express that. But
yeah,
we should never stop trying, though. That's the thing. We'll just get glimpses. You'll get glimpses in
yeah,
stories untold. You'll have days where you're like, man, I'm changing the world. And then you'll have 6 days where you're like, oh my gosh, this is the futile effort for sure.
yeah,
But
yeah,
the truth is we push each other's forward. And
yeah,
I think that's what you're trying to do with women all over the place.
yes,
Be very inclusive about it, which is wonderful too.
yes. Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm so happy, that how you captured it so well, because that's exactly what it is. Like I've talked to people recently. I always share. I said, we are not gonna last forever, but these words, right? Whether in the power of writing or the films, the talks that we have, the podcast, they're gonna last beyond our time. So that's so important, right? And I love the fact that you point to the word hope, because that's what it is. It's giving us hope, right? It's not just empower and inspire, it's hope, right? People live and continue to live every day because of hope, right?
Right.
It's we're grateful to wake up every day, but there's hope. Simple hopes, like I wrote a poetry book, works in progress, but it's like we're constantly hoping, like simple things, like even hoping to get a coffee in the morning. That's a hope. Hope
No, yeah.
sandwich at lunch or meet up with friends or something. Hope to get this work done by the end of the day so you could go out to dinner with your husband or something like that. Those are hopes. We
Right. And
recognize.
and
Yeah, go ahead.
and no, and it makes me think of going to and this isn't about the book, it's just about the whole this whole thing, the mission I'm on. It's like going to the mailbox. You kind of hope
Yeah.
maybe something will be in there. And that's why we all have the power to give somebody else that hope. And it doesn't have to be letter writing. Like you said, it can be a bunch of different things, but that's something so simple. In the United States, it costs 63 cents to send a letter.
Okay.
and you
Yeah.
put that in somebody's mailbox and you fulfill the hope because people hope they're going to hear from somebody. Like, I hope someone cares. Like, I hope someone listens. I hope someone sees me. I hope that, that's a serious need and hope that we have. And we
Yeah.
can give that to each other. We have this incredible power,
Yeah.
and the world is telling us right now that we don't. The world is telling us right now that we're divided, that we don't like each other, but it's not the truth. It's not
Yeah.
the truth, you
It,
know and
yeah.
it's not a ripple effect, and people like you don't have a ripple effect. They have like a tidal wave effect, like it's big, but we all have this opportunity to have a ripple effect
Yeah.
using our own gifts,
Yeah.
whatever they may be.
Exactly. And everybody has a different gift. We don't always have to have the same gifts. And that's what makes humanity so special and so precious, if I may say so, because and that's the thing, the globe is a great time of uncertainty, right? So, and there was a letter that I think it was number 10, that one where you talked about it was somebody that you liked, and in the past when and then but you guys had very different views and perceptions. But then you reached out to him and you wrote a letter and say, hey, I know we have these different views. I can observe that from Facebook. However, I just want to let you know I care and I'm your friend. And he
Right,
wrote back and he's acknowledged that. And he said, thank you for caring. You gave me hope. I think he wrote that.
right.
Yeah.
No, he did. He said you make me feel good about what I've done in my life, and then give me hope about what I'm going to do in the future. And if you think about that, I mean, all I did was write 2 pages. And again, this is not about me, but he just felt so much hope in being acknowledged and being like, you know what, you're my friend. And I, we don't have to agree with everything for me to love and care about you.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's
And
a powerful message today.
yes, I think that is the most powerful message today. And like all these talks about differences, different groups, diversity, race and all that stuff, politics, I just felt like that's exactly it. We may not always see eye to eye or share the same beliefs or views, but that's okay. We should
Right.
always, maybe look for similarities, accentuate the positives, and try to work with that, because with that energy, vibing together, like there's so much more things that you can do together, right? Yeah.
Right. And that's where the real hope is. And I think when you look at somebody, and I saw this with the letters, when
Yeah.
you look at somebody, when you write them a letter, and it's not just about the letter writing process, but you look at the person and separate them for their beliefs or you look at who, and when you start to say, okay, this is this person and this is who they were in my life, because that guy number 10 you're talking about was a high school friend who made every one of my awkward high school days better because we ate lunch together for 4 years. you know and when I realized that's who he was to me, he helped me survive high school in Spring, Texas. That's what he did. And then, you know what? It doesn't matter anymore. Like, who cares what he believes or doesn't believe? This
Yeah.
guy is my person. And there's so much hope. It's almost like, we talk about conditional love, but or unconditional love, but we participate, and a lot of us participate in our culture, and I think we get sucked in, whether we want to or not, in
Yeah.
conditional connection. I will be connected to you, Traei, and I will be associated with you if A, B, C, D, and probably E are true.
Yeah.
But by having those rules, we're missing out on so much rich, life-changing, hope-filled connection.
And I love that you brought that up, because when I go out and speak to people or network and meet people that I've never met in my life, I'm usually not looking as like what that person does or who that person is or whatever. I try to keep it as organic as possible. I think whoever is interested in talking to will come talk to you. And whoever you happen to walk around, if you smile and they smile back at you and you start a conversation. And the conversation doesn't begin with like who and where, what you do and all
Right.
those things, right? I'm not that interested. I'm more interested in you as a person, right? So that's what I care about. And that's the thing about these pronouns and labels and stuff like that. While it's important to understand and be aware of all these things, identities and whatnot, and respect them for sure, but it shouldn't be that, A, B, C, D, E list that you were just mentioning, and before I can be friends with you, right?
Right, right. Before I can listen to you and
Exactly. I should
respect
be
you.
exactly. It should just be a human interacting with another human. And then all the bonuses are like, where are you from? What do you do?
Right, right.
And then you have things that you like, do together or support each other, and then create more things together to help other people or something like that. Those things come organic, right? So go in with sincerity. I think that's the key point. Yeah.
Yeah,
Before.
and respect. And I wrote several people towards the end of the book. There's a letter. It's like 579, and I mean, we were on opposite ends on a lot of things, way more than myself and number 10 are. And that's all evolved over time. The letter writing definitely changed me in a lot of ways. But and I told her, I was like, you make me better because you present points of view that I don't understand. But when we stop dropping those, when we start dropping those relationships and unfriending people who we don't agree with, we're not going to learn anymore. The coming together will not happen because there will be that middle ground will not happen. We're giving up the middle ground. We're ceding it and saying we don't need it, which when we desperately have to have it to continue as a human race of people who respect each other.
Yep. And then, kind of just going back to earlier when we were talking about the commodity of relationships again, because this is all related.
Right, for
Y- you know,
sure.
and just to mention from your book, investing means depositing something of personal value into another human to achieve a richer connection with them. So we can do that in so many different ways. We've done it. We do it every single day through, social media, online messaging, text messages, right? Um, while it's easy to get away, with kind of like just the friendships on Facebook, but in real life, we actually need to sacrifice our time, our patience, our grace, our goals, our privacy, and even our freedom, so that we can continue to deposit into this meaningful relationship that you create. And it's not just about one person doing this and then the other person receiving. I think it's like a reciprocal type of situation, right? So I think I think I think in terms of like social media, I think the surrealness of the nature of the friendship there is one round, but we also need to live in today's world, and really learn like genuinely to how to really connect with people, right? So I mean, there's value in everything, but I just want people to be able to experience both. Yeah, sincerely.
Right. Well, and I think that, a lot of people and a lot of us feel like, oh, social media, it definitely has a downside, but it is a great jump off point for real
Yeah,
relationship,
yeah,
because it connects us. And then what do we do with it? We
yeah,
can physically show up for each other. We can write each other a letter. And what you said was so beautiful. We all have different gifts. And I think, sometimes we live in a world where people want to blueprint, this is what you have to do. But really, maybe the way forward is encouraging, like, I encourage you with Her Stories Untold.
yeah.
You encourage my crazy letter writing. We use things that we learn from each other to encourage other people. It's okay that our paths are different. We can get to the same destination of hope and love and the land of possibility from different inroads, and
Yeah.
cheer each other on as we go through our roads rather than, tear each other down because it's
e-
different.
Exactly. And I think that's so important because I wanted to ask you, how did this whole writing process, I guess, affect the transformation journey, like because you were sharing about we were talking about hope, right? But when I see hope, I also see grief, right? We're talking about Dana's grief, right? And I
Right.
think you mentioned, and that grief being a trusted outside party, and then we talked about how everyone's kind of grieving in some ways. Yeah. If you want to kind of expand a little bit on that.
Right, right. And I think that, as far as Dana, we talk about the power of letter writing, one of the narratives of that for Dana and I, because, it's interesting that we trusted each other so much just through a series of letters, but I think it was so intentional and deliberate and so genuine that we did trust each other. But one of the ways that somebody who felt like I was completely unequipped to like we all feel like when someone's grieving,
Yeah.
we don't know what to do. When someone's grieving a child, I think that's pretty extreme, and you don't want to say the wrong thing, you don't want to do the wrong thing. But she used me in a way that I could have never imagined. But she has 4 daughters and a husband, and especially at the beginning, right after they lost him, they were living together. The daughters came home to be at home for the most part. And when it would seem like everybody was having an okay day and she wasn't, she didn't want to bring everyone else down because everybody was in the same horrible situation. So she would write to me. She would tell me, I was her outlet. I was the trusted person she didn't know, because it didn't matter. It didn't. She apologized a lot in her letters, and you see that if you read the book.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't want to bring you down. I don't want to be the negative person, which is unbelievable to me, because I just felt so humbled to receive this woman's words, who was in such a terrible situation, who still is in a terrible situation. But I became this outlet for her. So all of a sudden, these letters became this great outlet for her to share her grief, this safe space, this place to deposit it. And so that's another place that's another power of the letter writing. But what you said about everybody grieving, I think that's true. And that goes back to kind of what I found from the letters, that we can't understand the depth of everyone else, the realness of everyone else's experience. So kind of treating each other delicately and realizing that we're grieving, we're hurting, we're lost, we're confused, you know, we don't know what to do next. And we all have a little bit of that going on. And the letters over and over and over again showed me that we just can't understand. The only way I can look at it is you have to reflect your realness on everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I love that. You have to reflect your realness on everyone else, right? And exactly what we were talking about, being genuine and truthful, right? So, and then once you send that message out, um, you know, maybe majority of times they have time to digest that and they'll come back to you, right? Of
Right.
reflecting that. Sometimes they don't, and that's okay because they're going through something. The letter didn't get to them, or maybe they passed away or something. You just never know what
Yeah.
happened, right? So, or somebody else took the letter, who knows, right? So I think it's yeah, I think sharing and writing that journey really does transform, where you are and how you walked about. So, do you have any like particular messages that you want to share with women around the globe, for perhaps like how they can navigate through life, steps to push through when things like fear and obstacles are holding them back, and how to have courage?
Well, I think you touched on it just a second ago, and I think that's, you know, the overriding theme of this for me is the hope is in our connections. But I think that the reason for that is when we're vulnerable and honest with each other. And I think that's one thing that social media does a bad job of, because we can filter our pictures and we can make sure it's all spelt right. And but that's not humanness. Humanness is messy and ugly and beautiful and wonderful, all in the same beautiful burrito. Like it's a total messy, the most beautiful, messed up thing you've ever seen. But when we're honest with each other, how refreshing it is when you go on Facebook and see someone being honest. A little scary and safe, but and it's just it's so. And I think if we can be vulnerable and share with each other how real life is, and then encourage each other and not expect it for everyone to be the same, that's the way forward. But sharing with everyone else that your life is not perfect is so validating for the rest of us, because we're all struggling together, is the truth.
Yeah.
And we need each other to struggle with. So when we're honest with each other, I think that's the way forward. That's where that support comes in, you know.
Yeah. And as much as I think, I guess we are constantly indirectly seeking for a safe space to do all those things, we can also we have the power to create those safe spaces for ourselves and for other people as well, right? So I think that's something that we can all think about, and that's a very powerful simple thing, just by inviting or doing something simple, right? Like, you mentioned in your book that, behind every profile and post, you know and picture, there's actually real imperfect people living real imperfect lives. So, which is
Right.
exactly what you just said. And you said that we can't comprehend the realness of other people's lives any more than can understand the realness of our own situation. And that is so true. So, with the power of writing, you can write very detailed and very complex and very sincere. But sometimes just posting stuff, pictures, emoticons, whatnot, like, I don't think it can capture the depth of all of that. So there's a
No,
lot of things missing in those gaps. Yeah.
right. And writing a letter, I still write Dana. And I write now that I know who Dana is, and I, trust her even more than I trust her before. I mean, I tell her stuff, but I don't tell her in one sentence. I don't tell her. We talk on the phone almost every day now too, which is hilarious. But if I'm struggling with something, I can write 3 pages about it. and she doesn't really have to respond. A lot of times she'll call me and be like, okay, we need to talk, but it's looking your life from the outside in a letter is so powerful because it's like you put stuff in order. And she tells people sometimes it's not Dear Dana, it's Dear Diary, because this girl is just writing about her life. And it's so therapeutic. It's so therapeutic. So that's another way, another mental health, way you can be kind to yourself when it looks like you're being kind to somebody else is write a letter. And like you said, and you've done such a wonderful job of encouraging people to be sincere and vulnerable. And I think I want to include those in my, tips on letter writing, because it's gonna enhance the experience on both ends of the equation.
Yeah, and no, thank you for that. And I feel like you can only be yourself. You can't be anybody else. No matter what you do, how you try, all those things, you're just yourself, and that's okay to
No,
like.
and it's good enough. It makes me think of Mark Twain, who wrote, these beautiful stories that have lasted, for over a century. But he wanted to be a great writer, and so the first couple of things he wrote, he tried to get real outside of himself and write these beautiful, big concept things. And he was like, what I really want to write about is I want to write about all these memories from my childhood, all these little things I remember. But this seems ridiculous. I mean, it just seems stupid and like it doesn't mean anything. Like it's not going to be impactful on the world if I just write about this river and these people running alongside it. That's not that's not meaningful. That's not, big and, these big ideas. And so when but his whole career turned on the point that he started to do what you said. He just started to be himself. And by being himself, by doing the things that he knew he could do that were in his wheelhouse, he left his imprint on, literature for, for the next several centuries, at least, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, he definitely did. So I love that. Um, I wanted to also like share. There was an entry about letter number 379. Kind of just coming back. And you wrote to a friend that you had met in middle school. You played soccer together and was part of a tight-knit group over the several years we were on the same team. The friendship, look at you. Like I think every time I talk about the letter, that's the thing. Like it brings us happiness, memories, or emotions, and they're so sincere because we actually took time to sit with it, have a relationship with it, even though it's just pen to paper, right? So continuing from the book, the friendship continued after we stopped playing soccer and remained active through high school, but I haven't seen her since graduation. So on October 11th, 2016, you wrote to her, what would happen if I tried to write all my Facebook friends a letter? Could it help me make a deposit in my relationship accounts? We're talking about that again. All of that, complete with horrible handwriting and questionable spelling, is how we arrive here at your letter. And we talked about how being imperfect is exactly who we are as human beings. You shared with her, first up, I'm super excited to be writing you. Well, yes, we haven't seen one another in 30 plus years. Somehow I don't feel awkward at all penning this. It's not something I can say about all the letters I've written. And I think it's a testament to the kind of friend you were to me back in the day. Okay. I guess junior high and high school was a tough time for most people. I was no exception. And when you look back on it, it becomes clear that certain people, just by being themselves, made it not only better and easier, but something much later that I can reflect on with a smile, which you just did when I was just reading this letter. To me, you were one of those people. And for that, I very sincerely say thank you. Now, all these years later, we have children and cars and bills and jobs and lives that back at Hildebrandt Intermediate School seemed like years into our hazy futures. We arrived at our hazy futures. I will say that I'm thankful for Facebook in cases like ours because with it, I get the honor of seeing your life now. Pictures of your son and daughter and the fun and positive person you still are to your coworkers, family, and friends. It's a privilege. And the thing I love the most about being your Facebook friend, and pardon me in advance because this is going to be super cheesy, is seeing your smile. I swear it brightens my day each and every time I see it. It's timeless, like all those years never happened and we're still hanging out after soccer practice or at a sleepover. Until we meet again, now know that I value your friendship and care about you and your people. Glad that our paths crossed when they did. Smiley face. and you received a handwritten reply from number 379 about 6 weeks after I wrote her. November 28th, 2016. She says, "Thank you so much for making a deposit in your relationship account with me." I love how she wrote that.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's true. I received your letter weeks ago and was very touched by it and have been marinating over my response. You're absolutely right about this weird connection people now have on Facebook that allows us to be friends, but not really. It allows us to rekindle memories from long ago, but they don't develop any further unless we act on them. I truly appreciate your personal note and your attempt to act on it. I too enjoy Facebook and the way it lets me see that friends from long ago and from past lives are doing well, growing, enjoying life, and experiencing the same struggles as I am. However, I suppose most don't know that I would truly be there for any of them if they needed me because Facebook creates a wall of disconnect. Yeah. And I think you mentioned what happened after you connected with her. There was a
Right. Yeah. Well, after that, I, like anybody else, thought, well, would she really be there for me if I needed her? And I love her wall of disconnect. I think that was a very profound statement that
yes.
but so when I thought about that, and so the letter writing stopped. I had published my first book and I had just moved back to Houston from Ohio, and I, had been gone for 12 years. So it was for the book launch. I'm a first time author. you know, I'm wondering who's going to show up at this thing. I'm super nervous. This it's like a time travel book. It's funny, but it's a weird genre. And I'm a first time author. Who even knows who I am? And so I'm at this Barnes and Noble in Houston, and she lives in Austin, which is 3 hours away. And so I'm standing there waiting for the thing to start, and who walks in but number 379? She drove 3 hours there and 3 hours back in the same day, just to, in her words, she would be there if someone needed her. So she 100% delivered on her promise. And she took that power we have with each other and just knocked it out of the park. Because, if you want to list the top 10 meaningful things that happened with book number one, it'd be number 379 walking in the room would be a hard three. Because it meant everything, because there was somebody who was still going to be for me. And she doesn't have to be my friend for the rest. I mean, she doesn't have to come over here and hang out with me every Sunday. She just showed up to one book signing, drove 3 hours one way, 3 hours the next way, and just really just, in words I can't express, you know, she just, showed up and blew up my heart.
No, I think that is so powerful. And I wanted to share because I started reading a book called let me just see where this is. It was called You Will Find Your People, and it's written by Lane Moore, and she talks about how friendship, right, can come in many different forms. Friendship doesn't always mean that you always hang out, you go eat together all the time, every week, share every single detail with it, and that's your friend. And that's the only type of friend. And friendship, a lot of times in our real life, is defined by what we see on TV, in movies, and films. We all love to watch Friends, right? We wish that we think, when in our younger years that we lived in an apartment with a whole bunch of friends. That's kind of how it's going to play out. Those funny characters, and everybody's going to be there for you. They're going to screw up, and then they're going to apologize, and then I'm going to go out of the way to do a lot of things for you. But that's not true. That's a TV on screen type of friendship, right? In
Right.
reality, it still goes back to what you said. Behind every profile post and picture, there are real imperfect people living real imperfect lives, and that's okay. And that's exactly what we were talking about earlier, being just yourself, right? And
Right.
and I think the key point here is that I think friendship comes in many forms. So just because somebody doesn't have the same interest with you in every other aspect, but there's some commonality in some areas, that's your friend for those things too. You have friends
Right.
that you talk to about certain topics. You have friends that you go out to, try out different new food, restaurants and stuff like that. You have friends that you invite to, your birthday celebration and anniversaries and stuff like that, or your friends that you travel together with, right? Kind of thing. So not every one of us, even ourselves to other people or our significant others and spouses and whatnot kind of thing, or parents, need to be all of those things all at once, right? So I think that's kind of the beauty of it, because she said she would be there for you, and I think it talks about like loyalty, right? She actually delivered her promise. She showed up at your your book, event at Barnes and Noble, and she drove all the 6+ hours back and forth on one day just to be there for you, right? That doesn't mean you hang out with her all the time or talk to her every single day, but she is your friend, right? And that's such a beautiful thing. I think people also need to appreciate that, because that is the
Well,
friendship. Yeah.
right, and we have more friends than we think we do. We're more connected than we think we are, and that's another thing this project did. Whether I'm connected because I'm friends, we're your brother and I are, he's your brother and my friend. We're loved and connected in more ways than we can ever imagine. And number 479 or for whatever her number was, she 379, she completely delivered on that promise. And she
Yeah.
didn't have to, like you said, she doesn't have to, but we're connected. And in this web of connections and love from 40 years ago, from last night, from 2 weeks ago, from a girl we danced with at a wedding, we're connected over and over again to these incredible people who do care about us, whether they can care about us every day, but whether they are in our lives every day, that's different. And that's a beautiful thing, because there's so much hope in that as well.
Yeah, I just think it's so much hope. Yeah, I just need to go to the stationery store. Actually, there's not much of those left these days.
No.
They used to have all the time. I walk in there when I was a kid and my hands be clammy because I would just be like, I'm so excited. Stationery paper, pencil, pens, and erasers. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's the best. Yeah.
That was the best feeling. Having a pen was like the greatest upgrade because that meant you were an adult. That meant
Right.
wrote I couldn't erase. Yeah.
No, that's you touched on that earlier, the
Yeah.
imperfection in handwritten letters that you would have to go back and start back over. We live in a world where everything can be filtered and spell checked, and it makes writing, communicating with each other much more seamless, having all those tools. But when you have scratch outs and you can't spell really good like me, and your handwriting goes, Dana tells me all the time, you're going to have to work on the handwriting, because mine is her. She's a school teacher. Hers is perfect. Mine is completely horrible. And but it just shows again, it's that, hey, guess what? I'm not perfect. And it gives the whole rest of the world comfort, including yourself, because then you take the pressure off yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And just very quickly, it's interesting for me because I was born left-handed, but then corrected to right hand. But then in my adult years, I've been training myself to write with left hand, so I can write with both hands now. And it's really interesting because I mean, even if you're not born, you've always written with your right hand or stuff. Go out there. I encourage everybody, invite everybody to go try writing with your other hand, your non-dominant hand. Because when you do that, it's kind of funny. You can feel this like nerve working or something like that, and it like opens up something, and it's actually kind of fun. Yeah. So experiment that and have it
That's
experience.
cool.
These are our tools. We're humbly and gratefully that we have these tools that we do so many things with. So I think people should feel empowered and inspired and have courage to just go out there and do a lot more right and right and right. So coming down to our some final points of today's talk, I wanted to ask you, is there anything else you want to share? I know you're an award-winning author and your first book was about comedy. So
Well, it's a humorous book, and
okay.
my intention was, I love history and I love everything
Yeah.
retro and vintage. So I thought, oh, I'll write a time travel book where I send myself back in time to my own childhood, and I have to spend like 36 hours at Thanksgiving with my family, only they think I'm a distant cousin. So the book puts me at the same age as my parents in the book, but then I have to deal with my 10-year-old self, and like my bizarro 10-year-old self, and my brother and sister. And so I thought this can be hilarious, because I'm gonna go back in time. I'm gonna see all this. Everybody's gonna be smoking, chain smoking, and like, there's gonna be these huge televisions, and it's gonna be so different. It's 1978, and and then I didn't realize that what was going to happen was, and it was going to be funny. What was going to happen was, it was going to be a catharsis, because I was going to write myself back in time. I was going to have to deal with all my feelings and realize that my 10-year-old self remembered it totally different than my 45-year-old self would have. And so it turns into this super relatable, really, really funny, fiction book that's kind of wrapped up in a tortilla that's nonfiction. And
Mhm.
so it's called You Cannot Mess This Up, a true story that never happened. And it's the book that I never thought I would have published, and I'm really proud of it, but it's hilarious. So
It sounds hilarious, yeah. Even with your brief description right now. If you can share, like what is your message to your 10-year-old self?
my message to my 10-year-old self is, you know, uh, your life is going to be great. this is a mess. It's a mess for everybody. Your life is going to be great. You just got to hold on to the part that gets great. But the other thing is, I've realized that I was so like cringy about the younger, and I call myself Little Amy in the book. I was so cringy about Little Amy because I was like, oh, the bowl cut and you're hyper and you got to calm it down, Little Amy, like, dial down the eye bulge, like you're in everyone's personal space. Hey, you know what? After writing this book, I love that kid. Little Amy, let's go. I mean, I hope Little Amy is all up in my headspace today because I'm so proud of her. And I didn't know that till I wrote the book, so go Little Amy, we made it, so that's it. My message is I love myself more. I love my family more. That book changed my life. I was a different person when I started it and changed it. I think it just, and then being vulnerable and releasing all that into, we all have family stuff, but releasing all that out into the world, it just was so freeing and I became a different person. So
It was,
good experience.
yeah, it sounded life-changing. I think that's a message not just for your 10-year-old self. I think it's a message for all of us too. You kind of, when you go back in deep, you become best friends with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't, because there was a point in the book where I'm looking around the table like at Thanksgiving, I'm like, I can't even really look at her straight in the eye, that little person, but she might be the sanest person in this whole room. And I think that was me identifying with myself, being like, you do that with yourself. Like, am I the only one who's not crazy here? And, I'm like, hey, wait, she's okay. We're okay. The rest of you people are, absolutely off the chain, but we're good. Me and
That's,
her.
no, that sounds really funny. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that book too as well. I wanted to ask you, are you involved in any other projects? Are you currently writing any book? And how do we find a copy of Dear Dana? Where can we find that?
Well, if you go to my website, amydaughters.com, both
Okay.
books are there. They're available anywhere you can buy a book, you can ask for it. I mean, it's, especially the first book on a lot of shelves, but there is a website called, and this is linked on my site as well as Amazon. It's called bookshop.org. And what
Okay.
it does is if you click on that, you can buy the book from bookshop.org, either of the books. But that basically is a network of small bookstores, independent bookstores. And so part of the profit goes back to the independent bookstores. And it's really helpful because independent bookstores, it's kind of like stationery stores. You talked about you go and put your hands on the stationery. You can still go put your hands on the books in the independent bookstores, and it really helps. They get a part of that profit, and it really helps those businesses continue to connect people and books.
Yeah.
But if not, buy it on Amazon by all means, but you can get it anywhere fine books are sold. So
Okay, so and what I'll do is after our talk later, I'm gonna be posting the links that you shared just so that people can get be able to access those links and how to reach you if they want to, yeah, they want to reach you.
yeah, my you can there's a form you can fill out and connect with me that way, or my email address is there. I mean, you can click on the little envelope and it'll email me. I'd love to hear from anyone who would like to connect and engage in the discussion of hope and letter writing, or anything, but especially those topics. I'd love to hear from people.
Yeah, so no, thank you very much. So I think just thank you, Amy, I just want to thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I had a genuine great time chatting with you, a deep connection. And I want to encourage everybody that's watching and listening, whether it's today or later, whenever you have time, go get a pen, go get a piece of paper, or go get a postcard. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. And start looking up addresses, reconnect, and just reach out to people, and yeah, just go from there. Just go for it. Use the
Right.
power that you already have in your hands to make a change that is could be life changing.
Right. We have that. I encourage the same thing. Write one letter and see what happens.
Yeah.
Write 5 letters and, it really will not just change someone else's life, but your own,
Yeah.
for sure. And I want
And
to thank you for having me on, Traei, though, because I am honored, to be your friend and to
yes.
be a part of this tidal wave of good you are actually not just attempting, but
Yeah.
you actually are following through on, and it's happening as we
And
speak.
and it's not me. Honestly, it's all the people that I've met so far that have pushed me through, like, forward. So I cannot do it. You were right. You were bang on right. Like, there are days where I'm like, yeah, I can do this. But then there are
Yeah.
days where like, okay, this is really not going anywhere, and what am I doing? And is it really helping anybody? That's, as a human being, that's where the yeah, you have these doubts and self-doubts, and that's natural. And then you see people like yourself, like talking to yourself, yeah, I'm gonna go write up a storm today. So I've got my postcards ready to go, and I'm gonna be writing you. We're gonna thank you for allowing me to open up and join this journey of the sisterhood of traveling letters and postcards and whatnot.
Beautiful. I
And
love that.
yeah, and I think it's so beautiful. And just very quickly, I want to invite people to get a postcard or write a letter and send it to senior homes, because there are a lot of seniors out there that might not have families meeting them, and probably during the pandemic it has been very difficult and whatnot, and they don't actually have enough interaction or communication. So it's
Right.
totally okay to go out there and write to somebody and just say, hi, how are you doing? And yeah, reach out to maybe different organization. I'm not on behalf of anybody, right? But I'm just saying, we can all do,
Yeah.
you go and search it up, right, wherever you are situated in the globe, and then send out a postcard and kind of just start from there, because they would be delighted to do to receive something. Because just wrapping up our talk today, you mentioned that how delicious it is to hold in your hand something that someone has also held, something that has intended just for you, something that has no monetary value but has personal worth beyond measure. So I'm going to leave everybody with that for today. Yeah. So thank you again, Amy. It has been
Thank
a
you, Traei.
yeah. So I will speak to you soon. I'll be writing you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Traei, from the bottom of my heart. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you from the bottom of my heart too. So have a
Oh,
fantastic, beautiful weekend, okay?
you too. Thank you.
Take care. Bye for now.
Bye.